Yo, it's Coco,
And your boy Q.
and welcome back to our channel.
Facts.
So, today we are going to talk about how past relationships that we've either been in or seen have informed and affected the way that we relate to each other and our relationships and our marriage. So, that's from past romantic relationships, our parents' marriages, our familial relationships, just kind of like how those interactions essentially inform the way that we treat each other and the way that we relate to each other. So yeah, that was something. I think it's something that when we talk about successful marriages, we talk about do's and don'ts, of what we learned. And when we talk about this whole idea of generational things being passed down, whether that be curses or blessings, we focus on generational curses a lot, but sometimes you pass on some good stuff. And so I feel like sometimes we don't think about we don't think about how our past and how our environment affects the way that we relate to people until you broke up or until something bad happens. Now you arguing, you trying to figure out why you're triggered all of a sudden. And it's because you saw your parents arguing when you was 6 and now they're divorced, and so now arguing freaks you out. It's just being self-aware. So I felt like it would be an interesting conversation for us to have with each other, because I feel like it's something that we've kind of touched on here and there, but like we've never really sat down. Well, no, actually that's a lie. We talked about it in our premarital counseling a little bit.
We did.
But I feel like it hasn't been like the focus of a conversation for us. Sure. So I feel like, that's something that we could share with you all. So I can talk about, I'll start with like my background. So my parents have been married for, it'll be 30 years next April.
Praise God.
Yeah. So I grew up with both my parents the whole time. I grew up seeing successful marriages. Most of the people in my family, especially most of my aunties and uncles, have either been married for 20 plus years or have been with their significant other for a long time. For me, marriage is it was an expectation, and it was something that, we get excited about. And so when I was when I was thinking about marrying you, I was kind of like, sure. It seemed kind of like the natural next step. Like we already discussed initially how when we first got married, or when we first started dating, we had already discussed that we weren't playing. We weren't just dating just to date. We wanted to see if it would lead to marriage. So after year 6, I was like, all right, homie, like it's the next time to progress to the next level. So I know I was a little bit more eager initially, or more ready than you felt like you were, right?
Are you asking me? Was that a question for me?
Well, yeah. Like, do you feel like that's true? Do you feel like I was ready before you were?
Yes. I feel like you were ready before I was. No, I don't feel like you were ready before I was. I do feel like you had a better understanding of what marriage entailed before I was. Like, I think I was ready for whatever idea of marriage that I had.
Right.
But I don't think that's what I thought marriage really was. Incomplete. Like, what marriage is incomplete is not what I thought it was. So I think maybe you had a better idea of that than I did. So I think maybe you were ready for marriage in what it actually is now than I was. But not because I wasn't ready for it, but because I had a misunderstanding of what marriage is.
So what do you think formed that misunderstanding?
I think what formed that misunderstanding is a couple of things. Number one, in regards to the conversation that we're having, I, in my history, did not come from a background of seeing successful relationships. My grandmother was not with neither of my grandfathers. My mother separated from my stepfather at 18. And
when you were 8.
Well, when I was 18
okay.
is when my mom and stepdad separated. And my mother and biological father hadn't been together since I was like under 2. Or hadn't seen each other at least since I was under 2. So from a familial perspective, I had not seen marriages that way. So not to say that I didn't believe that they could last or exist, but I think that maybe there are some things in a marriage that I saw that might have contributed to them not being successful. And so the things that I saw contributing to them not being successful are things that I adopted in my process of marriage. For example, how often you need me. My mom was very independent in their relationship. Maybe it contributed to their success or not success. I don't know, but you are not very independent of me in our marriage. Not in a bad way, but like I can't go off for like a week and you feel some type of way without you feeling some type of way about it.
I mean, you've done it, and
I have. Fine. Like I've had some work and stuff, but it's not something that I can do, or I can't shut myself off from you. Again, not to say that my parents did that with each other. When I think about their relationship, I don't think I felt like they shut themselves off from each other, but I do think that my pops and my stepdad was more independent, maybe. Like,
is it? I don't know if independence the right, because now I sound like I'm codependent or something. I don't know if independence the right word.
I don't know if independence is the right word, but I cannot shut myself away for a day and that be okay.
You can. You just can't do it for 2 or 3 days.
Right.
I'm too extroverted for that in these COVID pandemic times.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, trying to really think about what I remember from that marriage is a little tough now.
All right, because it's been like...
Yeah. It's been a while.
It's been almost 10 years, bro. Next year.
Yeah.
We're old.
Yeah, it'll be 10 years since they separated. No, yeah.
No.
19.
No.
I was 19.
You were, yeah, I was about to say.
So it'll be like 8.
We were together like a year.
So it's been like 8 still.
Yeah, that's still a long time.
Either way, I think getting back to the original topic at hand, when I think of my history with relationships, it's definitely different from yours. So when you talk about preparation for marriage, that preparation was also very different.
Yeah, like I think with girls, it tends to be a little, and we've had conversations before of how women are always groomed or tend to be groomed more into taking on that wife mother role. Because I remember even as a teenager, like my daddy would be like, you know, you need to learn how to clean up, you know, for when you have your family one day. You need to learn how to cook.
But you know what? I don't know if this is true for all the fellas out there who's watching, but now growing up in a household with two matriarchs, being my grandmother and my mom, my grandmother especially was very big on, you're not gonna find a wife doing this, that, and the third. So
okay. So maybe it's just a generation.
It's a generation thing because your parents are closer to my grandmother's age than my mother's age. Well, they're kind of in the middle. They're kind of in between my mom and my grandmother. But either way, I don't know. Maybe it is because my mom would say it too. She definitely told me from time to time where my grandmother would be like, boy, you better clean your room because ain't no girl gonna want no dirty husband, or ain't no girl gonna want a husband who can't make his bed or who can't cook or this, that, and the other. So I did get some of those same things from especially I remember my grandmother saying it more than anybody probably, but I think my mom and my dad definitely had instilled some of those things.
Yeah.
Just like nobody's gonna want to live with a person regardless. Like,
right. If you.
So maybe it wasn't, but yeah, my grandmother in the sense of a relationship. I think maybe my parents more in the sense of just being an adult.
Right.
So it wasn't relationship driven. It was like you can't be no dirty roommate. You can't be no dirty husband. You can't be dirty. Like,
right. Just don't do it.
So right, and other things like that. Like
right.
you have to manage money well, or you can't be spending like that if you got a wife that you got to feed or stuff like that. So,
yeah.
I think it was there. It was
there because it's interesting because I feel like I don't hear, and maybe it's the other men in my life, I just don't talk to them about these sorts of things. But I hear a lot more women speaking about it on a regular basis. So I think it's that like.
So tell me, fellas that are watching. Drop in the comments. Let us know.
Yeah.
Do you feel like as a man
you grew up
being reminded of being a husband to someone,
right? Or being groomed for your future family,
or wife.
Yeah.
I think men are more groomed to be fathers than husbands.
Huh.
Maybe that was a really random. I said that without thinking about it at all. I didn't.
That's an interesting thought, though.
I didn't think about that at all as it came on my mouth, but I think based off of the fact that men are groomed to be providers, I think more men are groomed to be better fathers, or no, I don't even know if better is the word, but are groomed to be fathers more than they are to be husbands. Because being a husband and being a father are two different things.
Do you think that's because we don't necessarily see the image of marriage? So we see the image of fatherhood, but we don't necessarily see, or it's not as pervasive, the image of marriage, like to where marriage seems like an almost unattainable or unreachable.
No, I don't think that's the reason. I think in keeping with the relationship thing, I think in girls versus boys, girls, like I don't want to say the peak of their life because it's not, but I think for a long time it was kind of made that way, was getting married. But
women were highly encouraged to get married while men were highly encouraged to wild out and or what they say, sow their wild oats. Is that
I don't even know if I would say that, but like
how would you?
But like I think where women were groomed to be wives, like I think more men are groomed to be like fathers. Because they're groomed to be the provider of their wife and the children that they have, and to be like the defender, and like a lot of the qualities that men are groomed with are more applicable to a family than just to a wife in particular. So a man is groomed to be, and this is getting off topic, but whatever. A man is groomed to be a protector, to be a defender, to be a provider, to be like the support. So when men are groomed to those things, all those things are applicable both to a wife and children, not just particularly a wife. Where I feel like the things that you're saying are groomed to be more so particularly a wife than it is to be a mother or,
I don't know though. I feel like it's both because, when our godson was born, right?
Sure.
And our godson just turned 2. He was the first baby you've held, right?
Yeah.
He was the first baby. I remember you
for real.
Right. Yeah. I remember because I had to tell you how to
other babies, but I was just scared.
Because he was like 3 weeks old when he was brand spanking new when we had met him, and so I remember I had to teach you football. Cradle like a football. But between that and then I think he may have been the first diaper that you've changed.
He was the first
right?
diaper. Oh yeah.
And so even with because for women, we even if we're not mothers, I feel like it's expected for a girl to know how to change a diaper. It's expected for, when you look at babysitters, most babysitters are women. They're not men. There are of course male babysitters and nannies, I guess, but it's overwhelmingly women, or the expectation is a woman. And so I think that it's a mother thing too. We're expected to be maternal. We're expected to be to encompass the whole feminine thing. Wife, mother, But do you feel like after we got married, you had to unlearn anything that you feel like you were taught, or that you feel like you had observed from what you've seen?
Do I feel like I had to unlearn anything? I don't think so. I don't know how much I learned from previous relationships. To be honest, because they weren't. I think my mindset was, because I had seen them fail, I didn't take too much from them.
Not even learning what not to do?
I mean, I learned what not to do in a sense of why the relationships failed. But I think the things that I learned not to do were very
easy.
Yes, very easy. I think now, hindsight being what it is, there are some things that I can gather from previous relationships that I witnessed as far as what not to do. I know that if I feel some type of way, I have to let you know about it early. I know communication is huge, and if I'm not happy for whatever reason, I have to voice that sooner rather than later, before I make a decision that I regret, or before I force you to make a decision that you might regret, whatever the case might be. But so I know, communication is huge, and though people talk about it all the time, how communication is important, it's not one of those cliche things where it's yeah, I know it's important.
No, you have to know how to communicate.
Yeah, you gotta know. It's a skill. It's a skill, because you gotta know how to communicate with your partner.
Right. So, as you can see, this is clearly a topic that we have a lot to say about.
So much to say.
And we don't want to torture you guys with a 35-minute video. So
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So this is part 1. Tune in next Wednesday. Check out part 2.